Burkina Faso is building a city, but it's not for the rich. No investors, no rent, no foreign aid, just 50,000 free homes given directly to the homeless, the displaced, and the forgotten. Why is President Ibrahim Traoré doing this? And how is he pulling it off without the West? Let's find out. Outside Ouagadougou, in a zone once seen as marginal, trucks rolled in, foundations were poured, and entire road networks appeared almost overnight. Engineers, masons, and planners worked in tight sync, with no fanfare. What was happening? Who was funding it? Where was the press? It wasn't until aerial footage began circulating on local networks that the world began to understand. Burkina Faso was building a city. But this wasn't just another housing development. This was something far more radical. At the center of it all was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who has repeatedly defied the traditional rulebook of African politics. But this time, he wasn't battling foreign troops or sanctioning threats. He was targeting something more invisible and more dangerous: internal collapse through displacement. Burkina Faso has faced one of the world's fastest growing internal displacement crises. Over 2 million Burkinabè have been uprooted in recent years, fleeing insurgent violence, drought, and abandoned rural areas. Most end up living in makeshift settlements, scraps of plastic and wood clustered around cities that were never built to receive them. It's the kind of slow, burning disaster that never makes international headlines until now. What Traoré has done is flipped the entire narrative. Instead of treating the displaced as a burden, he made them the priority. And instead of asking the international community for help, he ignored them entirely. The first stage of construction includes over 12,000 homes with full roads, power lines, and water infrastructure laid in advance. Each unit is being constructed not as temporary relief, but as a permanent dwelling. They're not hidden on the periphery of the city. They are the city. Eyewitnesses who managed to visit the site early described it as eerily organized, with an atmosphere more like a military operation than a typical construction project. No setting up tents, no foreign contractors giving orders, and no signs of UN branding. Just uniformed planners, local workers, and rows of rising homes. Modest, yes, but structured with precision and care. Inside Traoré's administration, officials refer to this project in quiet terms as a civilian fortification. A home, they say, is more than shelter. It's a weapon against chaos. In a country surrounded by instability, mass migration, and foreign manipulation, giving your people permanent ground beneath their feet is a revolutionary act. And make no mistake, this is a revolution. By keeping everything under wraps, Traoré avoided the usual traps: bloated proposals, years of delays, donor restrictions, and corruption that bleeds resources before a single wall is raised. Instead, he turned to state-owned enterprises, military engineering units, and a new network of local suppliers. Many of these contractors had never worked on anything beyond small-scale housing before, but were now operating at full national capacity. While critics abroad question the pace and cost, no one can deny the sheer audacity of it. Burkina Faso, a country often labeled as aid-dependent, is now doing what even rich nations hesitate to try: building a city from scratch for people who own nothing. And it's just the beginning, because the blueprints go beyond homes. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Now, to understand the soul of this project, you must understand who these people are, and why Traoré is defying the global order to build a city for them. Burkina Faso is not at war with another country. It's at war with fragments of itself, armed groups, foreign-backed insurgents, desertification, and decades of neglect. These forces have forced millions to flee their ancestral homes. Entire villages have been emptied overnight. Children have watched their homes burn. Parents have buried loved ones without coffins, and women have given birth in the open under skies that offer no shelter. Many of the displaced are subsistence farmers. Uprooted from land, their families have tilled for generations. Others were teachers, civil servants, cattle herders, or market vendors, ordinary people swallowed by extraordinary instability. When they fled, they didn't become refugees in another country. They became internally displaced, statistically present, but politically homeless. And then came a quiet decision from above. They would not be managed. They would be housed. Traoré's housing project is not merely infrastructure. It is a redefinition of national belonging. Unlike international refugee camps where aid determines your fate and shelter is temporary, the people selected for Traoré City are being given deeds. They are not tenants. They are owners. The criteria for selection go far beyond just refugee status. Widows, many of whom lost husbands in military operations or insurgent attacks, are being prioritized. So are disabled persons who cannot find work in traditional villages. War veterans long discarded by the state after their service are being called back not to fight, but to live in dignity. Youth-headed households where children as young as 16 have become de facto parents after family loss are being placed in housing with special support services. And then there are the families that defy paperwork, those without national ID, without birth certificates, without any formal record of existing. In most countries, they would be disqualified for lack of documentation. In Traoré City, they are manually verified through local leaders, neighborhood councils, and oral records. But it goes deeper than humanitarian aid. Traoré understands what most policymakers miss. Displacement isn't just about losing shelter. It's about losing identity. When a family is forced to live in a tent for 6 years, their children forget what home even means. When a man cannot provide a roof for his household, it breaks more than tradition. It breaks the man himself. This city is an answer to that fracture. It's a mass act of psychological repair, an attempt to bring people back from the margins, not as dependent, but as citizens. This is who the city is for. But what kind of city awaits them? Because this isn't a return to the past. It's a leap into a future many never imagined Africa could lead. Step into Traoré City, and the first thing you'll notice isn't the buildings. It's the silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the quiet hum of systems that work. Solar panels gleam under the Burkinabè sun. Pipes run smoothly beneath freshly paved roads. Digital meters blink to life inside modest homes. And all of it, every wall, every wire was built with the future in mind, not just survival. President Ibrahim Traoré didn't just order the construction of homes. He commissioned a living system, a city engineered from scratch to prove that Africa doesn't need to borrow progress, it can build it. Each neighborhood in Traoré City is structured around community cores, clusters of essential services like schools, health clinics, water stations, and food markets. These cores are never more than a 10-minute walk from any home for elderly residents and disabled persons. Flat ramps, handrails, and specialized mobility access points are woven into the layout, not as afterthoughts, but as standard design. The transportation system is electric from day one. No combustion engines. Solar-charged buses follow wide, clearly mapped lanes, connecting housing blocks to agricultural zones, workshops, and administrative centers. There are no traffic jams, no carbon smog, no decades-late upgrades. This is what cities look like when built from zero with modern tech and no colonial hangover. But the most revolutionary design lies beneath the surface: green water systems and subsurface irrigation belts. Engineers have embedded low-flow channels beneath the soil, capturing gray water from homes and redirecting it to fuel crops and trees planted across the city's perimeter. These agricultural belts will grow maize, okra, and sorghum, enough to feed tens of thousands. In a region hit Hard by food insecurity, the city is engineered to feed itself. Construction materials were locally sourced and environmentally rated. Bricks are produced using compressed earth block technology, a low-carbon method developed by Burkinabè engineers that requires no large-scale factories or imports. Window shades are angled to reduce indoor heat, lowering the need for artificial cooling. And for the internet, instead of relying on foreign providers, the city is connected through a new public fiber grid owned and operated by a Burkinabè state telecom partner. This is no accident. Traoré's team brought in not Western consultants, but young Burkinabè architects, agricultural scientists, and engineers, many of whom had never been given serious government contracts before. Now they're shaping what some urbanists are calling Africa's first fully sovereign smart city. But the most profound detail isn't in the blueprints, it's in the process. The city was built with the displaced, not just for them. Before the first wall went up, teams were deployed to speak with women, elders, youth, and former soldiers living in displacement camps. What did they want in a home? What had they lost that mattered most? How far should schools be from clinics? Where should the mosque sit in the market? One planner revealed, "We didn't draw the city on paper. We drew it from memory. The memory of what people had before the war took it away." This bottom-up philosophy extends into governance. Each neighborhood will elect its local council with a reserved seat for youth and one for women. Dispute resolution mechanisms are rooted in a blend of customary law and modern legal norms, with mobile legal clinics set to patrol the area weekly. Traoré City isn't a copy of Paris or Dubai or some polished Western capital. It's something rarer. A Burkinabè blueprint grounded in the realities of its people, yet reaching for the future. It's proof that modern doesn't have to mean foreign, and independence doesn't have to mean isolation. But with this defiance of the status quo, one question hangs in the air. What does this mean for Africa's place in the global order? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue. Now behind closed doors in Brussels, Washington, and Paris, diplomats are whispering, not because they don't understand what's happening in Burkina Faso, but because they do. Traoré City, rising quietly on West African soil, without the permission or participation of any Western power, is a direct threat to a global system built on dependency. This isn't just a housing project. It's a political act. And across the global south, leaders are beginning to ask the unthinkable. If Burkina Faso can do this, why can't we? In traditional development models, Africa is positioned as the recipient. Loans, grants, technical advisors, debt, and austerity packages are handed down like gospel. For decades, African infrastructure came with strings, IMF audits, World Bank conditionalities, and EU monitoring frameworks. Progress was measured in how well you followed the Western manual. But Traoré just tore up the manual and rewrote the terms. There are no international lenders involved, no visible branding from USAID, the UN, or the EU. The city is being built with state funds, local expertise, and African labor, with zero dependence on the traditional donor circuit. That isn't just financially unusual. It's philosophically dangerous for those who profit from Africa's permanent state of need. And this silence from Western capitals is louder than condemnation. Traoré's government has received no formal congratulations from its so-called development partners, no invitations to urban innovation forums, no op-eds in The Economist praising his bold new approach. Some Western media outlets continue to frame him as a populist soldier who threatens democratic norms. Why? Because the model he's creating could spread. Imagine what happens if Mali, Niger, Chad, or even parts of Nigeria begin replicating this approach. housing the displaced with no World Bank loans, building solar grids without Siemens contracts, and feeding their people without importing rice from European markets. That would break the entire aid industry's logic, that poor nations must be managed, not empowered. Traoré City isn't just domestically sovereign, it's developmentally sovereign. And that scares people. It also inspires. For many Africans, especially the young, this isn't just about homes. It's about proof. Proof that Africa can imagine and execute its future. Proof that aid isn't the only route to dignity. Proof that leadership can mean more than speeches and photo ops. It can mean roads, bricks, and working toilets. And while the West remains mostly silent, other players are taking notice. China's state media has begun airing subtle praise of the project, especially its emphasis on local materials and independence from Western lenders. Russia already locked in economic partnerships with the Sahel, sees in Traoré a regional partner who reflects its defiance of US and European power. Even Turkey, through its development agency, TICA, has shown signs of quiet admiration. But Traoré hasn't aligned with any bloc. He has made it clear Burkina Faso will not be someone else's project. That position, neutral, unapologetic, and homegrown, is starting to feel less like an exception and more like the prototype of a new African politics. So now we must ask, can this lone effort spark a continental shift? Is Traoré just building a city or starting a revolution? There are moments in history when a single act reshapes what a people believe is possible. The American Civil Rights Movement had Selma. South Africa had Sutu. And today, Africa may have Traoré City, a place that began as a housing initiative, but is quickly morphing into something far larger. A philosophy of governance grounded in self-reliance, dignity, and revolutionary urbanism. What Traoré has done isn't just visionary, it's contagious. Already, whispers of replication are gaining volume. In Niger, transitional authorities facing their displacement crisis are reportedly studying the novel Espouis blueprint, seeking to adapt it for communities abandoned after French military withdrawals. In Mali, there are early reports of military-aligned civil engineers surveying zones for similar people-first infrastructure experiments. And in Guinea and CAR, youth activists are openly calling for cities of justice to be built for war-affected populations. These are not copycats. They are reflections. Because what Traoré has tapped into is not just unmet housing demand. It's a hunger for systems that put people before profit. For decades, African development has been channeled through what economists call growth-centric models. Roads that connect mines, ports that serve exports, and housing built to attract foreign investment. But what Traoré has done flips that script. A city not designed to impress outsiders, but to reclaim the lives of those who were never supposed to be seen. And perhaps most powerfully, this new model doesn't wait for global validation. That's critical because for so long, Africa has been told that its ideas must be refined, approved, and often diluted by outside institutions. But Traoré skipped the application process. No feasibility studies from European think tanks, no approval rounds from World Bank boards, no best practice recommendations from foreign consultants, just action. And that action has created an urban prototype that serves as proof of concept that Africa can design its own spaces, build them with its own hands, and inhabit them on its terms. Social media, too, has become a battlefield of narrative control. In past decades, projects like this might have remained obscure, filtered only through Western headlines. But today, millions of Africans are watching daily progress videos, analyzing blueprints, and debating design philosophy in real time. The rise of urban sovereignty as a trending term among African intellectuals is no accident. The continent is thinking aloud, and it's using Traoré City as its case study. Meanwhile, university urbanism departments from Lusaka to Kala are launching student competitions to design future versions of people-centered cities. Talk radio in Accra and Addis Ababa now includes open calls asking, what would it take to build one here? And then there's the diaspora, African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and Afro-Brazilians, many disillusioned by institutional neglect in their own countries, are rallying around this development. For them, it's more than a Burkinabè success story. It's a challenge to the narrative that Africa is forever behind. But for this movement to truly spread, it must withstand pressure. Already, murmurs of diplomatic resistance, quiet economic retaliation, and increased scrutiny of Burkina Faso's monetary policy are surfacing. If more countries adopt the Traoré model, refusing debt, building sovereign infrastructure, and cutting off elite-centered urbanism, what becomes of the industries and institutions built to control them? That's why the success of this city isn't just about roofs over heads. It's about proof. Proof that housing doesn't need to be a luxury. Proof that governments can serve the poorest first. Proof that Africa doesn't need to wait. Because if one city like this can rise from Burkinabè soil without permission, then 100 more can rise across Africa with purpose. And if that happens, then perhaps Traoré hasn't just built a city, he's built a movement. Would you live in a city built on dignity instead of debt? What if every African country started building cities like Traoré's? Who would try to stop them? Let us know in the comment section. Is this just a housing project or the start of Africa's Great Reset? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.